Club in Las Vegas.
Oh, he has his own club?
Yes, he has his own club. Like I think it's connected to a hotel. It's at the bottom of a hotel, so everybody's like coming in and out, and they can just like go downstairs and watch Brad Garrett do his his little bits. Welcome to another week, a very special week of Ghost in the Scene. I'm your host Gio, and I'm here with my co-host Rob. How are you, Rob?
Oh, ladies, gentlemen, non-binary theys. I'm floored. I don't know if we were quite ready for this week. It took us a while to prep for this one. We're coming a little bit later than usual, but yeah, it's pretty wild. I want to say special shout out before we get started. A happy birthday to some of the most influential people that I know. One, of course, being yourself, Gio. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
I hope you celebrate this most auspicious day. It's the numerology of 6 and the 9 going to each other is, I think, really shows our core, our spiritual core, the kind of this infinite 666 kind of looping in on itself. And of course, this is also celebrating the day of our, more troubled, perhaps, controversial figures. Perhaps the most controversial figure in the world.
Our nemesis, you might call him our nemesis. The one that always keeps us up at night. We're talking about Johnny Depp. I happen to share a birthday with this monster, and I just want to shout him out that I haven't forgot about him. He's not out of my sights. And in fact, I feel like, I'm also in his sights too. Just like Rob was, I felt a very cool sensation. And someone whispered happy birthday at midnight when I was sleeping in my bed. And it could have been him. It sounded like him. So, Johnny, I know you're there, and happy birthday to you too, bud. I guess today is our day of peace. We're both going to celebrate, and then, 364 days out of the year, we're going to go after him. But not today. We have another monster in our sights. So let's get to that, because we're going to have a lot of information pumping at you guys. Like Rob said, this was a very intense research week. And my birthday is good and all, but the truth matters more than a symbolic day. And I think that's what I want my present to be. I want it to be the truth. So we're going to give you that. And let me tell you, it's going to be hard to wrap your mind around all of this. So we're going to give it to you as best as we can. Let's get started with the news of the week. This is breaking news, guys. Breaking as far as it was just released information, but this happened like a long time ago, 40 years ago. But Rob, you've told me about your fascination with the Yeti culture and with cryptozoology. So we've talked about how Bigfoots can exist on DVDs with werewolves. So there's information about Bigfoots that you got me privy to. So what's going on with that?
Of course, and you may also know them as Sasquatch, is another term. Big hairy guys, I've also heard them referred to as. But when you really dive into it, it's all the same. And these creatures are, not just in North America. It's known for, usually being on the Pacific West Coast, but is also found in other locations, such as the Himalayas, the Andes, perhaps. Less research, but I believe there are some large-feeted creatures down there as well.
Wow. Well, real quick pause. You just totally triggered me, because you said the word Andy and feet. And I don't want to plug the new Toy Story movie, but think about it. Think about it. The Toy Story movies have Andys on a foot, right?
Yeah.
That's proof of a Bigfoot in the Andes. I think case closed. So keep on going, because I just want to shout out that Disney knows more than they're telling. But obviously, if you know what they're saying, the sub context, you can understand that yes, there are Bigfoot in the Andes because of Toy Story, that they said so. Wow.
Exactly. I mean, and that's really, I think that's a really good point. And I think that's why we're doing this show as well, is to give this sort of media literacy to our audience to understand that the truth is out there, and actually all these people are delivering you the truth every day, as long as you know how to look for it. And Disney, especially with their vault, they're very stingy and will never open up that vault to us. But fortunately, there are other agencies that are more publicly available and have opened up their vaults. So yeah, as Gio was saying earlier this week, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, the United States of America, recently opened up their vaults.
Wow.
And released some letters pertaining to their investigation on Bigfoot. And this is really breaking because, this is, the equivalent of the Disney Vault opening, but within our own public records. And, the FBI is much more far-ranging. Their vaults are much larger than the Disney vaults. But fortunately, since they are a public entity, we can petition. And I've been in the forefront of petitioning this for years. So this has been a huge, huge victory, especially in the cryptozoology community, to finally get this information out there, to have proof. At the very least, it has proof that the FBI, the top investigation agency in our land, it has been looking into Bigfoot for years, secretly. And they've finally admitted that this was something that was happening. There's always been stories about, maybe they have, and, these sort of false reports, and people always kind of playing it down. But this is the first time we have hard proof. And you can find it yourself. This is publicly available, folks. That means you can go on the World Wide Web. You can surf that net and find this information for yourself. And within it, you'll find these letters about the FBI laboratory and our paranormal investigators on the scene at the Bigfoot Information Center up in Washington. So big shout out to the Bigfoot Information Center in Washington. Props to you for keeping it 100 in terms of the investigative practice. And they could have tried to spill this information and release these documents themselves, but they chose not to because they are professionals, and realizing that if you go against the FBI's wishes, they have the power and resources to shut it all down and to stifle information. So, but in terms of getting the truth out there and being fearless advocates and continue to push and to get the FBI to release, this is the most, the best option that we could have wished to have happened too, because this is coming from the FBI itself. So we know that it has that stamp of legitimacy that, not just people within the paranormal activity world, but, people that are just aren't really in the scene yet can see that this is serious and real stuff.
Right. I mean, the news is talking about this. This isn't just, us and the people that listen to the kind of, paranormal community stuff are talking about it. It's CNN, it's the New York Times, Al Jazeera, BBC, everybody is talking about this. This is on the tip of everyone's tongue. And when you look in the report, there are some telltale signs that they did do some cover-up work. The FBI, they had to release this. There was somebody, a whistleblower possibly, that was a rat in the house and told a little, too many bits of information to somebody, and they pieced the puzzle together. And then, of course, when you catch the FBI in a lie, and especially when it's an old lie, they tend to kind of go the route of just releasing the information, but redacting certain things and kind of changing certain, things. Oh, we don't have any records of that. We lost them. We never, we don't have anybody that works there anymore, so they can't tell you. So there's a lot of things that they can say to cover their own track. And this report stinks to high heaven. of them going with the Sharpie and changing certain things. So when you look at what the BIC, the BIC, the Bigfoot Information Center, they send in all of these samples of hairs, and they
15
think
different samples.
I mean, that's a lot of samples. More
That's
than two is
156.
and out of 100 different samples, because 15, think about 15 hair samples. How much is a hair? You can cut up a hair into 2 hairs. You can cut up 2 hairs into 4 hairs. So think about how many individual hairs. What counts as a hair? Is it one strand? That's a hair strand. But how many hairs can you get out of the hair strand? That's a lot of tests they could have done on these samples. Now, the first conclusion the FBI comes to is there is no known mammal
Or
now
animal
for
whatsoever.
any
For that
animal.
means. Yeah.
No lizard hair is on there. No snake hair,
Mm-mm.
right? No dolphin hair. No whale hair. This is something completely alien, maybe, right? Or nothing that they found. Then, and
Nothing
we also have
known to science, right? I mean, at that point, they're admitting it's paranormal. It's outside the realms of our normal world.
And we have to remember when this was. This is 1976. Another 6 year, and we've talked about how 6 years are very special and maybe dangerous, and this could be a reason why. Flare-ups of Bigfoot across the world in 1976 wasn't reported like it would be now. But I mean, if you could imagine, the movies that came out in the 90s kind of talk about stuff that happened in the 70s. We have Harry and the Hendersons, a movie about a Bigfoot who befriends a family in San Francisco. So these were real stories, documentaries about what really happened in the 70s. And so it's not just the FBI that we can go to as a source. We can go to film, which is why we're talking about it, because this is, obviously a Hollywood podcast, but there's real life consequences and there's real life documentaries about what happened. And we do think that they covered it up because then maybe a few months later, the next year in 77, they say it's deer hair, right? The sample that you gave us. But Rob, you saw the syntax of what they said, and it's very telling because they didn't say the hairs samples. What was it they said? It's very specific.
It says, and I'm pulling it up right now too, because there's stacks of papers to go through and reference materials, and we're just pouring it through together. So here it is, the quote. The quote is, quote, "Recently, the hair sample, singular, photograph attached, was delivered to the laboratory by Mr. Howard S. Curtis, Executive Vice President, Academy of Applied Science in Boston, Massachusetts." And this academy sponsors the captioned organization. So they got the Boston, they got the Beantown scientists, they got the guys from MIT working on this. And they say that the hairs determined, see, now they're switching up their syntax here. They said the previous sample, the hair sample, singular. But then the next paragraph, they said the hairs, plural, were determined to be a member of the deer family. And also, it's really weird to me. I'm just going to throw in real quick. The fact that they have the top scientists in the country working on this, and they use the familiar English title deer and not like a Latin name.
Oh my god!
For the specific, because they don't even say what kind of deer. Because deer, and that's kind of offensive to all deer out there. Because I know there's a lot of different species, subspecies of deer. Is it a white-tailed deer, brown-tailed deer, like?
A Bambi?
That makes a huge difference. Like, is it a deer that's actually local to the region of of where they pulled those samples? Because that matters. Because that's scientific research. This is 101. This is science 101. How to conduct research. And there are some glaring. Right. These are some glaring holes in this report.
That's how you know that it's fake. That they covered it up because they didn't even do the extra work to categorize what kind of deer, what kind of, what the sex of the deer was. You can tell a lot from a hair, and they don't even say what a hair is. Scientists are supposed to quantify things, okay? And if you can't even quantify what a hair is and what hairs are, then frankly, I don't take you seriously, and I don't think the science community takes you seriously. So there was some pseudoscience going on in the FBI in 1977, and maybe somebody, because obviously the first report comes back and it's unverified, right? They don't know, and I think that's the kind of attitude that I think a lot of us should approach cryptozoology with. I've never met a Bigfoot, but possibly we have proof of other people coexisting with big feet over the world throughout time.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point,
we're also missing the most important piece of this puzzle as well in terms of our timeline and how we know it's phony. Because we have back in 1976 in the fall, I want to say around August, but you can look up this report. Don't take my word for it. Look at the report yourself. But however, later that year in 1976, because they're corresponding, because the evidence that we're given aren't official reports. They read more like letters that they're sending to each other back and forth from the Bigfoot Information Center, because they need to know. It's like, is this actually Bigfoot that we're experiencing here? And they actually send them a letter, later in 1976 in September, because they're asking, okay, we sent in our hairs. What's going on? You said you'd be able to find out what's going on here. And later in September, they send them a letter saying that they say, quote, however, we have been unable to locate any references to such examinations in our files. Whoa. And this isn't like years later. This is like a few months at most from them sending these samples.
They lost
and
them.
Then they send a letter later saying that they lost them, that there's no reference. Not only did they lost them, that they can say they lose them, they said that they never even had them to begin with.
And that's where the cover-up starts. They switch out the Bigfoot hair for the deer hair. We get one confirmation letter that there was no known animal, right?
And that's the first one they get.
That's the leak.
Yeah.
That had to be the leak. That had to be somebody that put that in there. And they didn't, and of course they sandwich in the front and in the back these misinformation little packets that you just kind of, you see that and you're like, oh, okay, they lost the stuff, the report's done. Or, oh, okay, turns out it's a deer. Doesn't matter what kind of deer.
But then they come back later. They say, we don't have any records of it. But by the way, then they come back in 1977. But by the way, it's deer hair.
Yeah. How'd you test something that you never had? So we have a leaker, we have a rat in the house, we have possibly a Bigfoot that wants to be seen. We're talking about living in an intersectional world where different minority groups are finally being able to be seen by the public. And I think the Bigfoot community is one of these burgeoning topics that we haven't talked about. And it's this subgroup of a people. I'm not sure if they can, live like in cities. I'm not sure what they do. Obviously, I'm not as well versed as you are, but I think that all of these Bigfoot sightings in the 70s haven't stopped. That there's still leakers. There's still possibly Bigfoot living among us, right? And I think we have evidence of at least one. And this man has made a life. This is like the success story that all Bigfoot will look up to in the future. This is the one Bigfoot that made it out of the jungle or the Andes or, the Himalayas. And he made a life for himself. So we're talking, obviously, everybody knows we're talking about Brad Garrett. Do you know Brad Garrett? Obviously, you've seen Everybody Loves Raymond. He's the brother.
Of course. I mean, that was his breakout role, too. And in terms of, like you said, like the 1990s and its impact for, this field and this awareness. I mean, it's really our first breakout. of paranormal awareness that was beyond things that were just scary or something to fear, but just embracing paranormal activity across the board. So, this is an inspirational story in a sense, but maybe perhaps it's also a cautionary tale to see, how at least starting in the 90s, there seems to be more inclusion, but at the same time, the underbelly still has something a little bit darker underneath. What are the motives? I don't know about Brad Garrett's motives, but I know that, the higher ups of the ghost run media institutions don't often, if not always, have not the have bad intentions. I'm just gonna say that they have bad intentions, and
No, they
they abuse the. I'm sorry, I'm just so worked up.
No, I understand.
Over this
Listen,
as well, but
what it is when you work on haunted ground that's not consecrated, that's not blessed. These studios, they've lived off the backs of ghosts, and they've turned good ghosts into bad ghosts just through resentment, just through hate and overworking, overcrowding. When you are a Sasquatch and you are a minority, right? And you are coming up in a world that's made full of short, slim people, and you're a tall, giant monster, it's hard for you. And so you will take roles that maybe weren't, your first one in the you had in mind. So this is a cautionary tale about roles that actors and actresses and people are willing to take just to keep working, to feed their big feet children. And so we have the story of Brad Garrett, and this is something that is going to shock a lot of people. So everybody get ready, because I'm not playing around anymore. This is where the research really comes in. So Brad Garrett has been in a lot of movies, a lot of projects. And when we say that he's taken on different roles, different directors, Paranormal Activity has followed this man. And it's kind of crazy that we've never talked about him before, Rob, because we've talked about a lot of these movies separately. They've had their own individual episodes, and he's just flown right above our radar. We don't know where he's been. Like, maybe we've even talked about him.
Almost just like Bigfoot himself, wandering through the forest, just quite, just unseen,
Exactly.
And I think today is the day that he finally walks out of that forest, and we get that famous photo of him striding across, and we finally get our first good look at him.
So here it is. So here's the first look. This is a man that has been in more than 5 Disney movies. And that's a lot. Okay, let's go down some of the more larger titles. He was in Ratatouille. We talked about how there was a rat in the FBI. He was in a movie called Ratatouille. So right there, your ears should be tingling to get a little warm. So get some ice cubes, rub them on your ears, because they're going to get even warmer. He was in Tangled.
Before moving on, Tangled. Again, and if you're in the scene, you already know this. Not who did he play in Ratatouille as well?
Oh my gosh,
he plays a ghost.
Gusteau
the ghost.
Yes.
So again, when we're talking about, especially in a time where they like to cross-cast paranormal creatures as well, it's like, oh well, he's Bigfoot, he could also be a ghost. So I mean that again, this is just a little sample, just to keep this in your mind.
And this is not his first time playing a ghost, and that's the kind of thing that big feet or Bigfoot people are good at. Obviously, he has a long list because he's been a ghost in multiple things. He was a ghost in Casper. He was Fatso. Fatso the ghost in Casper the Friendly Ghost. And if you remember, he was one of the unfriendly ones. So I'm not sure if he becomes friendly near the end. I think he might, but he's kicking and screaming the whole time. So he played a very mean ghost, and Gusteau is supposed to be a good ghost. So there's some range in his acting. He's not a one note, jazz musician. He can play the whole scale, which is nice. But we have him in a TV show called Everybody Loves Raymond. Now this is like we said, his starring, like where he got kicked off and launched his career. He was a cop, single man, right? He was the son of this man who was very crankety, very angry, and then his mom was overbearing. A lot of energy, right? A lot of, I would say, pent up energy in his character Robert.
And a lot of paranormal activity too. I think you don't talk about the spiritual strength of that series as well. As you said, the father, Peter Boyle, the actor, it started off because he was the Frankenstein monster in Young Frankenstein, is how he started his career.
Of course.
That famous documentary about Gene Wilder as a scientist. Who brought Peter Boyle to life, who created Peter Boyle.
And that really happened. And, rest in peace to Gene Wilder. He would have definitely come on the podcast and talked about it, but sadly we couldn't get him in time.
We are still consulting with our spiritual mediums. Perhaps we can get him on, his spirit on our show at some point, but, just stay tuned, stay in the scene. That's a level of technology that we're still working on, but are working tirelessly to get to, because this is important.
It's really hard to get microphones into the ghost dimension.
Yes.
and get a long enough cord that'll reach my house. So we're working on that. But until then, we will have possibly video interviews that we could have of Gene Wilder, where we can see if his spirit will talk to us through them. But Gene Hackman was in the movie uncredited, acting with Peter Boyle. And this is a Hollywood, little side story that everyone loves to talk about. He was blind. He made himself blind because he couldn't stand the sight of the monstrous Peter Boyle. It scared him so much that he blinded himself. And I think he might be blind till this day. And he's just a really good actor. And he's been acting like he can see. And we have this kind of level of acting, because imagine Peter Boyle acting as Frankenstein, method acting. He smelled, he had different body parts attached to him on his arms. So that kind of method acting is given to Brad Garrett, is given to a Bigfoot. And that's how he can turn from a bad ghost to a good ghost, that range, that Frankenstein range. Because, we all think of Frankenstein as being a kind of like stoic, one word, syllable kind of person, but Peter Boyle played him very differently. And that's where we see how good of an actor Brad Garrett became. But let's look at his mother, his overbearing mother in the show. You said her name was Doris?
Doris Roberts, who's been a longtime actor with many, many credits, has been around for years and has really been a part of the industry. She's not necessarily at the top of the marquee, but she's just one of those people that has been on pretty much every single set, and could probably, tell you, again, this would be another really interesting person to get in contact with their spirit. Sadly, she is also passed on.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. We will be working to speak with, this would be another person that would be interesting to speak with, especially because not only does she have acting credits as within her living body, she also has acting credits as a ghost post-mortem.
Yeah, this is so strange. I mean, she's been, she's been dead for about 3 years. And yet she's already making movies as a ghost a year ago. So this is a very interesting story, because this too is based in reality. So I'm not sure if she is reprising her role that really happened. I don't know the context of this movie, but it's called Zizi and Honey Boy, and it was made in 2018, which is a full 2 years after she passed. I don't know how they did it. This could be like a Star Wars CGI thing, or it could be as simple as they just filmed it in the ghost dimension. And it'd be interesting because this movie is it's about 9/11, the terrorist attacks. So there's a lot of paranormal activity surrounding this entire event. This event changed the course of humanity and the way that we were going. So it's a supercharged event with ghosts flying everywhere. And we have a woman who is just newly a ghost as the star of this movie. So Brad Garrett had a lot to learn from.
Yeah, I know. And as we could obviously go in way more detail in every single one of these productions. Mm-hmm. And we've already seen kind of the turns we've already taken. We're already at 9/11, where we started talking about Bigfoot. So you see the web is starting to form together. But I think we should get back on track and talk about what we were here for, which is about. Yeah.
So here's the beauty of our investigation, Rob, is that we've never strayed too far away. We've never strayed too far away from what we were talking about, because what's her name again? Her name is Doris, right? Brad Garrett was in a movie called Finding Dory. The year that she passed, 2016. Now, I don't want, the look on your face says it all. Guys, if you could see, it's just pure shock. We have not strayed far from what we're talking about. The fact that Brad Garrett has been in multiple Disney movies. We talked about he was in Finding Nemo. He was in Finding Dory. He was in Tangled. He was in the Night at the Museum movies. He was in A Bug's Life. All of these movies, haunted. That's there, no questions asked, right? But these all have paranormal connections that we've gone into. Different people attached to them. Diane Keaton, Eugene Levy, Idris Elba. All of these people have their own stories, their own ghost stories that we could get into. But we're just showing you a peek of Brad Garrett. We're showing you the short side of this, just the cautionary tale part. We can get into details in the muck in a further episode, because I think he deserves a full episode. And, not just about all of his movies. We could go one by one. So all of these movies, including the Casper movie, including the Night at the Museum movies, he's playing ghosts, because Night at the Museum, if you remember, it's about how all of the artifacts from a museum come to life at night. So that's ghosts coming to life, right? Spirits walking with humans. He was in 3 movies, all throughout being in Easter Island, right? I'm not sure anybody knows the significance of what an Easter Island ghost is, but the power of that, he remains inside of himself. So this is a man that we really have to watch, because his career has spanned from now and back to like the 1980s. This guy was in Voltron and early Transformers cartoons. He was uncredited in all kinds of it was called Toonsylvania, right? Transylvania for the Toons, from Mickey Mouse and stuff. So when we talk about Bigfoot, when we talk about minority groups, we forget about Bigfoot. We forget about Brad Garrett. And that's something that I wanted to remind everybody. And he's going to be on our watch list. This, we might not do a depth step for him. I'm not sure if he needs that, because I don't think he's doing anything necessarily evil. I just think he happens to, because he's part of the paranormal cloth of society, he is a Bigfoot. I think that ghosts and other things, paranormal events, are just attracted to him, and he happens to be walking a life of paranormal activity.
I mean, it could be between Hollywood typecasting as well.
Oh wow!
Because, right, I mean, you know, these are people. He's worked at Disney. He's probably been in the vault. They've probably kept him in the vault at some point. So, you know, this is not happening in an isolated event. There are very powerful players at hand here, and you know, there's someone not wanting to get all this information out there, and that's why it's important too that we're speaking about it and that we become more aware of it. And I think this will only lead, you know, as we continue to do the show, we find that there are more and more paranormal actors and actresses and people out there that are performing, big names, top celebrities that really have these paranormal backgrounds that we need to unpeel and unmask. And I guess when I say it like that, you know, I don't want to feel like we're outing anyone, because this could be dangerous. Like, in a certain way, there's a lot of people that might be frightened of Bigfoot and might want to harm him, or perhaps have some sort of scientific studies, you know, probe his body. And we are not advocating, you know, that is the furthest of what we want to do. We are looking for inclusivity. So we do take that, we are taking that into consideration. And I think that's just as important as well as we discuss about this, is how we treat the paranormal community as well. I think that's what we're looking for, is to have greater harmony moving forward.
Absolutely. So we have more evidence to present to you, but frankly, we don't have the time. This next movie is going to be a doozy. Brad Garrett is attached to something truly horrifying, and this might be the one thing that we really have against him. So until next week, we'll give you a little sample. I'll play you the ending clip as we're exiting this this episode. But guys, next week we will be in a way more spooky zone. This is a movie that is an abomination, but we have a lot to learn from it, actually, because there's a lot of symbolism. So if you get the chance, just prepare yourself. You know, listen to spooky music, listen to chains dragging on the floor. You know, eat a lot of candy. It is a Halloween themed special episode. So Halloween in June, that sounds good to me. So stay in the scene, guys. Rob, your birthday's coming up. I'm not sure if we'll be able to do a birthday episode for you. If we do, that'll be great. But if not, have a happy birthday. His birthday is in how many days?
Just a few. It's this Wednesday. It'll be on the 12th. So if you're listening to this before now, Sunday that we're recording it, the 9th, and this next Wednesday, I'm feeling those birthday wishes. If you want to send some spiritual grams out to me, some spiritual cards, I'll be feeling it. I'm in tuned. I think I just got one right now. Thank you for the wishes.
That's fast. So guys, stay in the scene. Have a happy birthday, Rob, and I will have a happy birthday. And keep your eyes on the dang screen. Take care.